Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Chamber Breakfast event. This morning we have Scott Anders from New York Life, and he's going to talk about the 4 disciplines of execution. I'm sure the talk will be excellent and hopefully reflective of the quality of the Chamber.
Well, let me just wrap this up.
Good morning.
Thank you, Tim. Let me start off by passing around some handouts.
Good.
This is going to be a
like
interactive
handouts.
workshop, so you're going to be disappointed that there's not a whole lot on there, but a lot of room for you to write. So if you need a pen, I think there's some extra pens here to take notes on it, because this is going to be interactive. So hopefully, my goal is you walk out of here with some practical ideas and tips to help you do the hard part of implementing plans. I mean, would you agree that which is harder, planning or executing the plan? Yeah. Well, the planning is, as the leader, you sit down, you come up with your ideas, but the challenge with execution is, all of a sudden things change when everything goes crazy.
Anybody else?
Everybody's got their pens because there will be a test. So anyway, just let me explain about the title, 4 Disciplines of Execution. We're not going to do a martial arts demonstration or talk about lethal injection versus the electric chair. That's not what we're talking about. It's actually a Franklin Covey seminar that was based on the book by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. I don't know when this came out, maybe about 10 years ago. But Franklin Covey put it into a seminar. And in my previous career, I spent 27 years with New York Life. 21 of those were in management. And I was responsible for management training for our senior leaders, both nationally and then internationally. And we use this seminar. This is one of the most favorite seminars. Now, it's a day-long seminar, so hopefully you all are ready to get a day's worth in about an hour.
Who's the author?
It's Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan, which is a good point. So if you put your business card in here, we'll have a drawing at the end, and we'll give away the book. So I have extra copies of it.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Can I sit over here?
If you want to. Okay, so again, the 4 disciplines, it really is how to improve your ability to implement change, whether you're a one-person operation or whether you're leading a team or a member of a bigger team. Everybody has a handout? Okay. My real role, or my paying job on occasion, is I'm a financial advisor with Eagle Strategies, which is associated with New York Life. Like I said, I've been with New York Life for 27 years. And with my responsibilities for management development, that's how I sat through tons of these. And when I was overseas, I actually had to present these through an interpreter. So hopefully I'll be able to do it in English, and that will help you get this done. So, okay, so what's the problem with execution? Okay? Does anybody have any problem with executing? You come up with a plan for the year. Anybody have any challenges with that? Anybody? You can say yes or no. Okay, so you run into having problems. When they, in the book, and they talk about in the introduction, is that when you talk about goals and goal setting, 50% of the average organization doesn't know what the most important goal is. And 50% also don't know what they're supposed to do directly toward that goal. I think 12% don't know how it's measured, how to measure progress toward the goal. And about 25% have any kind of accountability thrown in to follow up on progress toward the goals. So it is a big problem at all levels, because you may have the best intentions, but I just know personally in the financial planning arena is that people say, well, stuff happens, and I get overcome by events. And one of the things that they talk about in here is the whirlwind, because it's nice to come out of here with your 4 disciplines and you've thought through some things and you got some ideas down, but you get back to work and the phone's ringing, you got all this email, you got the day-to-day crisis of just getting it done. And that takes a lot of energy. So where are you going to get extra energy to implement this new stuff? And so we'll talk about that, because the reason we think this works, or I believe that it works, is because it's a process and it should be very congruent with what is important and most important in your business. So, okay, has anybody heard of, so we're on the first discipline now. Has anybody heard of the term WIG, wildly important goals?
No, but I like it.
Okay, so Alan, you've heard that term before. What is a wildly important goal? It's wildly important. Gosh, come on. Don't worry the answers. But the important thing about a wildly important goal, it's got to be above just getting by. So if you had no plan and you were going to get up every day and do what you were going to do, it's got to be higher than that. But it's got to be lower than something that's crazy, ridiculous, that's unattainable. So it'll be wonderful for everybody saying wildly important to earn $1 million by the end of the year. Probably not likely. But what is a realistic goal that is exciting and motivating? So when you look at that goal, you go, wow, if I get this done, this would be really exciting, and it motivates you on a daily basis. So it has to be motivating, and it has to be above the status quo. SMART goals, you've heard of that? I'm sorry?
Would this be like the ultimate goal of whatever it is you're trying to do? This would be, if you got there, you've met all your little steps?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the achievement of that will bring along all these other things. So, like, for you just throw it off the top of my head, if you said, it would be nice to have a storefront. But to be able to have a storefront, I need, and a staff to do all the stuff I don't like to do, I need to be at this revenue level. Okay. But that would be awesome to be able to do that. That may absolutely not be what you're interested in. But that might be the goal, because to get to there, the way I define to get to there, I have to have this kind of revenue, all of these things in place to make that happen. So wildly important needs to be something that is exciting. When you use the acronym SMART goals, you've probably heard that before in planning. But what does that stand for? Specific,
Measurable.
Achievable.
Actionable.
Achievable, actionable, or
Realistic.
relevant, realistic, relevant to what your business is, and T. Time oriented. You need to have a deadline for it. Okay, so your first thing is to take a moment and write on your handout what are a couple of wildly important goals for your business. And then when you're done with that, just sort of look up so I know that you've finished that, and then we'll move on. Again, since this is a workshop, you don't have to agonize for just one. You can put down a couple.
Yeah, I think everybody.
Everybody got that? Okay. You're still working on it, keep working on it, but anybody wants to share what they put down as an example of a wildly?
Well, I started with make it through the second year,
Make it through the second year, okay, okay,
earn a profit, and then gain more corporate accounts.
okay. All right, that's good.
Even a dime profit.
I wouldn't say make it through the second year, but but making a profit would
Well,
in turn make it.
right.
If you made a profit, then you would make. So you could sort of. Well, then you need
They
to.
could go either way.
Yeah. So you need to make a sufficient profit to make it worth making it through the second year.
Well,
Is that fair enough?
I think.
If you're making enough of a profit, then you would have
Well, I'm not
obviously.
making a profit because I haven't been in business long enough to cover
Right.
my initial expenses. But I'm
So-
almost there,
Right. So if you were able to achieve making a profit,
yes.
that would meet the other goal.
That's true.
That would meet the other.
Yes.
So that might be the one you want to focus on. Other examples of a goal. Because it's not easy. It really isn't terribly easy to sit down and say, this is what I want to achieve. Because there's so many different things going on. And again, with that lack of focus, that's why sometimes we struggle, is because we have 10, 15 different wildly important goals. And without that compass direction point, we end up sort of scattered all over the map. Now, it's challenging enough when you're a sole proprietor or you're a one or two person band. In a large organization, the development of wildly important goals need to be something that you really get the input of the people that you're working with, because you really want to have buy-in. And maybe in the restaurant situation here is they know you're the boss, but asking for their input, what would be an exciting thing for the team here to achieve? And again, they know you're going to get the revenue from a specific performance, but people want to be on a winning team. And if they see what's going on and they have the excitement of a busy place and a growing place and growing opportunities, it doesn't always have to be, if you do this, then I'm going to pay you more, or you do this, I'm going to do that. But it is difficult. I think it's particularly difficult as a sole proprietor to sit down and go through this process and say, what is really wildly important to me? And define that. So that's the very first thing, the hardest thing. Now, to get to wildly important goals, you have to, they have to be measurable. So measuring a wildly important goal, we have to put some definitions around it. So in Stephanie's case, to be profitable, there's a numerical figure on when you cross into the black. Okay, so that's a good goal for that. There are lead measures and lag measures. Can anybody tell me the difference between the two? For goal. A lag measure is typically what the goal is. It's the quantitative number that's part of your goal. So in the case of the restaurant business, it may be revenues, average revenues per evening. The sales business, maybe it's total commissions. The banking business may be, depending on your area of responsibility, the number of loans made, or dollar quantitative number. Another business, it might be number of customers, whatever those numbers are. Lag measures are what's important. Those are the results we're seeking, but typically they're hard to influence. Okay, because they require somebody else's action. So in the case of an insurance business, you cannot say, I can drive commissions, okay? Because somebody else has to sign a contract, somebody else has to approve the contract before you ever get the commission. So that's not a controllable. So that would be a lag measure, is commissions, okay? And also, customers and seats, you can't drag somebody off the street, or maybe
I can.
say, eat this stuff and pay me, and pay me for it. It requires somebody else's interaction. So that's the definition of a lag measure, is something that is out of your control, but is the ultimate objective. Okay. A lead measure is the second discipline, is the hard work of saying, okay, if we want to have more donors to the Historical Society, if that's our goal, then what can I control in my activity to influence that? And that correlation is not always a straight line or 100%. We might think that, Angelo is, you might think that, the number of ads I run in B correlates to, how full the restaurant is. Or you may think walking around in the evenings and talking to guests, increases the repeat customers. You may have hunches for that. In the insurance business, typically, Sales business, it's how many calls did I make? Okay? Those are lead indicators, because you can control that. You can control how many times you pick up the phone. You can't control how many times people answer. And we were talking about referrals yesterday, Brian was. You can't control how many referrals you get, but you can't, that's a lag measure. You can't control how many times you ask. So you can measure that because you own it, you can control it. So the next step now is to take a moment and put down some lead measures. Okay? You wrote down your wildly important goal. Try to quantify that. And then now go through the mental process of trying to figure out what are some of the actions that you 100% can take toward achievement of those end results. Soothing music to play.
Those all asleep.
Yeah,
Just come along.
Yeah. Put that Jeopardy music on.
So just as a point of discussion on that,
Yeah.
because you mentioned like investment in advertising so, and correlation, so, you know, the key is trying to find those things across a group of different activities that you could do that would give you the best correlation. Isn't that a
Correct.
major
Right.
consideration?
Yeah.
You could do other things that don't produce the results that you're looking for, so it's, you're always trying to sense which ones give you the best.
And that's an excellent point, because there, you know, the old rule of thumb is that 80% of the results are generated from 20% of the activities. And the hard part, what you're trying to do now, is figure out what that 20% is. Okay. And if you know, the day-to-day whirlwind that we're in, we often forget to take the time to do that. But what are the 20% of the activities that you do that are most directly correlated to getting the results you want? And look at your calendar, look at your day-to-day. What is it that actually proactively drives results? Because we can be busy all day and fill up our time with very important stuff that's urgent, but not necessarily important. That's necessary to run our businesses, but doesn't necessarily moves us to what's wildly important. Here.
Would requesting testimonials be a lead measure or a lag measure?
Requested, that would be a lead measure, because it's, the request is something that you can control.
Right, but,
Right. So you could measure that.
okay.
Okay. And
But
then
it requires someone else's participation.
Right. But yeah, the getting, so if you were tracking how many testimonials you got, is something you can't control. You can only control how many times you ask. And again, just in the case of the phone call, is that, oh, okay, I need to make X amount of more phone calls a day to drive my sales results. And you might think, boy, that's plain obvious. Okay. The problem is that if you're not calling the right people, it might not make any sense.
You've got to do some prospecting beforehand in order to research.
Right. So it's not as easy, it's not as superficial as it might seem on the surface, is just do X amount more of this or spend more time on that, because you may not be able to spend more time on it. Is that what are the sweet spots? I think, you know, we were talking one evening about usable website and coupons and different partnerships that you've done, and that really seems to have done some cool things. So there's some metrics there that are not directly correlated, but you increase there, that does have an increase in more people coming to the restaurant. So there are things that correlate, and again, advertising is like one of the hardest things to quantify. And I know a lot of people try to quantify it, says, you know, put on this coupon, you know, where you heard from us, so you can try to get some feedback.
Trisha's excellent in quantifying PR.
No. But it's really hard to show that correlation of one thing driving it to sales. And so that's where, you know, thinking through the lead measures is important. But how do we figure out if the lead measures are correct, really goes to the third discipline. But anybody want to share a lead measure? So you had asking for testimonials is one, but that's a good one, controllable. Anybody else? Everybody's so shy. Come on, Steph.
Donating to causes, I can count, I can measure how many calls I get back from people who have.
That are affiliated with that call.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, there's a correlation with that seems to work, right?
Making 25 contacts a day. Some people call those touches, but I mean that's an Edward Jones thing to try
Right.
to make sure you reach out.
So in any way, face-to-face, phone,
Anything.
whatever, just a touch, contact and some, does that include email?
No, phone or. yeah,
So it has to
either
be
phone or email.
a human touch?
Yep.
Okay, good. Anybody else? But some of the, or if you're struggling with it, you can't figure out what be quantifiable, maybe we could help.
Well, we have a new business that we launched, so we're looking to book a wedding. So something for us would be to get an engaged couple list and send out an e-blast or communicate with them on some level.
Okay. So, you know, reaching qualified contacts of people that are on a registry of some sort. Okay. Anybody else really agonizing with this? Because again, this is not easy to try to come up with a number.
I think sometimes I'm in a business where we have to make a lot of personal contacts, and you go back and back and back, because the first time is rarely successful. But I think having your promotional materials with you and dropping off every time you go a piece of your material,
No,
whatever, a ball green pen or
right,
whatever.
right.
Or a box of Scott.
But once, or along with the Biscotti, is that what you're saying? Maybe we can increase it. Anybody else struggling with that? Because it's an important thing to understand the lead measure. Okay, the third discipline. So you should be on the other side. Okay. The third discipline is create and keep, maintain a compelling scoreboard. And to me, this is sort of the surprising thing that I got out of this seminar. But anybody play sports in this group? Ever played sports? Knew somebody who played sports? Have turned on the TV and watched sports? Okay, all right, so I think we've got. Can you imagine playing a game without a scoreboard? Watching the World Cup yesterday.
You did a scoreboard yesterday, it was 7-1.
Yeah. But behavior changes with the scoreboard. You know, if you've been at a playground, guys shooting around a basket, if it's not a game, they're joking, and then all of a sudden it turns into a game, the whole chemistry changes. You know, people are thinking, a little strategy, a little huddle, and they execute differently. Okay. We're hardwired as human beings to respond to scoreboards. And the plays that we call in the first quarter when we have all sorts of time versus the plays that we call in the ninth inning or the fourth quarter are very different. And it depends on the motivation of the goal. It seemed like Brazil was highly demotivated after about 4 or 5 to nothing. But the time available, the score makes all the difference in the world. And so, the Covey and the book points out is that keeping score of your progress towards your wildly important goals is critical to make a difference. So what goes into a compelling scoreboard? They have to be accurate, obviously. They need to be timely, so they need to be updated on a daily or a weekly basis. And they need to be visible. What are some, and they should have both the lead and lag indicator. So if we're trying to drive commissions, which we can't control, that's the number we're trying to move. But we're going to look at the number of touches per week. And let's see if we move that up, does that go up? Because you might be tracking a lead indicator that doesn't correlate, or correlates very, very slowly, or doesn't give you that boost that you thought it was. So that's how you check out, did I pick the right lead indicator or indicators is there relevance? Does moving this number move that number? Because you might think, gosh, I just love advertising, and that is so awesome, and I've tripled my advertising thing, and it doesn't move the needle at all on my results. And then, again, you got to go back and say, am I doing the wrong advertising? Am I advertising in the wrong area? Or is this the wrong strategy? But if you don't track it, and you don't indicate, is that, does promotional activity, all the places where I've done it, you might test it, is that, am I getting better results as a result of that versus not doing it at all? Maybe something I love, and I like, and it makes me feel good, but it's not impacting my customers at all. So that's how keeping score is important. What are some scoreboards that you see around, or that you think of when you're thinking of this? I mean, the one that's in town, I mean, although I haven't seen it lately, they used to have one for the Labor Day parade, the big thermometer. You know, progress toward fundraising. I mean, that's probably in the most simplest form, a progress toward goal. And as you get closer to the end of the day, you see the thing going up, and it does make you think, and hopefully take action. What are some other kind of measurement scoreboards that you can think of?
Click-through rates?
Keep track of the deficit.
How they track the deficit?
Well, you know, there's on a big graph.
Yeah, so you have a,
You can watch them.
right, yeah, just feel like you want to go shoot yourself. Numbers spinning, they go, ah. But I mean, one way is, I mean, for most of us as business people, we're thinking a spreadsheet, okay? And there's different things you can do on a spreadsheet. I know when we're doing budgeting, we translate some of those numbers into a graph. So that as you change the numbers on the spreadsheet, the graph changes. And then the graph shows, you know, goal and progress toward goal. And so you just enter the numbers, and then it gives you a visual, hey, cool, the line is moving up, the line's moving down. You can put like a speedometer. So if it's like average capacity per night, I'm just guessing, I don't know if you even measure that, but if I've got 100 seats in the restaurant, and I want to increase, if that's my wildly important goal, get up to 85% on average per night, that's a speedometer thing. That's, you know, 0 to 100%, and I want to track it that way. Okay, am I moving that needle literally? If I had some sort of metric on a weekly basis, 25 calls or contacts per day, I can put 25 is the straight line and where I want to be at the end of the month, and then where am I in my daily effort. You know, there was a crisis, I had to go to Sal and Pepe's for breakfast, and it blew my whole day. And maybe that's the low point. And then you go up, and you've got all of your numbers for the week, and then you're more motivated because you keep the score. You go, oh crap, I got to get to this by the end of the week. Or I'm going on vacation on Friday playing golf. Boom, I need to do more of this day because I'm tracking. Key thing with a scoreboard is it has to be visible. Okay, it does you no good to have a scoreboard in the coach's pocket on the sideline saying, I'll tell you when you need another score. You just get out there and play hard. Okay. Is that it doesn't do any good. It needs to be sort of up front. Okay. And that brings us to the next piece, which is the accountability piece. So before we transfer to that, any other questions on scoreboard? Because you can set that up on spreadsheets. If I mean, some of the techniques they talked about in the seminars would be to sort of highlight the cells on that. And if you know how to do that, that's great. But if something is below a plan, then the cell is set up to say it shows up red. If something is above plan, it shows up green. If something is within a band, it shows up yellow. And so, you know, somebody puts in the data at the end of the day, and boom, you can see, am I above plan, below plan, and you go, and you have the imagery of, ooh, there's a lot of red on this thing, I need to get the red out. Okay. And that helps you do that. If it's just a bunch of numbers on a sheet, you can, it doesn't have that same compelling nature. But if you can see a bar, if you can see, you know, numbers, You know, that debt clock is, again, to me, it's a little too busy to be motivating. Okay, if there was some like cliff at the end of it or something, you see a little train and a cliff coming up. But having something that clicks with your brain, so that again, a glance at it, you go, yeah, or I need to quit screwing around this afternoon. I got to get on the phone. But you need to have it someplace that's visible.
Do some
What
of
do you
these
think,
things become less impactful over time because they become part of the environment? You know, it's like, oh, there's the board. You know what I mean? Or there's how do you keep it impacting you?
Well, and again, excellent question. And that really is the fourth discipline. Okay, because the fourth discipline is the accountability piece. And I was just thinking of a real life example of, you know, trying to come up with 4 disciplines, and you look at the VA crisis. Okay, and you say, so the wildly important goal was to improve health care for veterans. Okay, the lead indicator, the lead measure that they came up with was waiting time for appointments. Makes sense, right? Okay. Now they came up with a neat incentive to all the administrators to say, if you do it within 2 weeks, we're going to pay you a bonus. Okay. So, and again, I think even Congress, you know, got involved and down to the details to do that. So all of that is good. We're tracking, right? But nobody was holding them accountable to achieving the wildly important goal, which was improved health care. They just focused on the lead measure, and it got corrupted to where, oh, we're hitting the lead measure just by changing the way we measure. So the accountability piece is essential, and it's not the most favorite part of everybody. And if you're a sole proprietor, you know, you're the boss holding yourself accountable. I mean, we can, or I know I can't talk myself out of it. Always over in the back and saying, well, it's okay. It was a really hot sunny day, and you really did need to hit that golf ball as opposed to go talk to somebody else. So the accountability piece is critical to getting it done. So let's say, what are the, and when you look on the way we determine the terminology of that, and that speaks to your point, Mary Jo, a cadence of accountability. Sort of a strange word, you don't see that very often. What does cadence evoke in your mind? A cadence of accountability.
March drum beat.
Yeah, heartbeat. Yeah, marching drum, routine, something that just happens all the time. Okay, and again, in the studies that they did in most organizations, 25% of the time people don't get feedback. There's no accountability. I know, you know, in the corporate world, you know, it's annual evaluation time. 12 months is like the only time you talk to somebody, or somebody says, you know, oh, by the way, you didn't do so good. Okay. And the coaching and you know, mid-course corrections to hit your goals, it's uncommon. It's uncommon. But it's also something from a human dynamic sort of hard to do. So, what are the you know, what do we want to do in an accountability session? And the way they characterize it in Franklin Covey is they call it like a huddle, sort of in the same, you know, vein of a football play or a basketball play. Is, you know, we get together and we say, okay, are we all good for the week? And then we go, okay, what we do last week, what are we going to do this week? Is everybody okay? Break, let's go get it done. So it's not a regular staff meeting. It's not the Monday morning staff meeting where you have an agenda and you've got other stuff you got to get done. It's a different kind of session. Now, the way, the 3 pieces of that are, we review the, you know, we look at the scoreboard, and again, it could just be you as a sole proprietor doing it. You look at the scoreboard and you review the prior week and said, did we do what we committed to do toward what was wildly important? You know, we said we were going to make 25 calls, we said we were going to do this, we said we were going to do that. Did we do that? If you got it done, then you can say yay, celebrate, pat yourself on the back, pat your team on the back. But if you're going around and you've got a couple of people on your team, and you say, you said last week you're going to do X amount of calls for the wedding thing. Did you get it done? No, I got 8 instead of 10. Okay. What got in the way? Was it, did you lose focus? Is 10 too hard? Tell me about it. You know, you're not beating somebody up. You're just saying, you said you were going to reach out to these donors. Okay, you said you were going to call 5. Did you call 5? Yes or no? And could we track it? And then, did it get done? Yes? Great, congratulations. You got 7 done. That's awesome. Any tips or techniques to the rest of us of why that went so well? Yeah, I blocked it. I did it first thing, so on and so forth. So people are sharing what went well. Somebody didn't get it done, then what got in the way? Is that just lack of focus, or is there something structural in the way we're operating that we need to tweak to make it easier for you to hit that number? Okay. So what's your number for next week? So we reviewed last week, the scoreboard. Review this week. What is your commitment for the rest of the week? Okay. Everybody good on that? Does everybody think they can get it done this week? Okay. Ready, break. So it can be very brief. It can be a stand-around meeting if you're meeting with 3 or 4 people. If you're doing it yourself, it takes a discipline to say, put it on your calendar, an appointment with yourself, and say, let me look at my calendar for last week. What did I commit to do? What did I learn from that? Any wins, any losses? What got in the way of me hitting what was important? And then what's my plan for the coming week? Am I going to hit those numbers? Am I going to make that up? Am I, applying lessons learned? Okay. And then I'm off and running. Now, at these meetings as well as that, obviously it's a cadence, so it needs to be a routine. It needs to be something that's not, oh gosh, I've got to sit down and do this now. It needs to be something that is a normal part of doing business, so that you stay on top of it and it doesn't get away from you. And the keeping score, again, is part of that other discipline. At the end of each day is writing down, what were my numbers for the day, if whatever your numbers are. I mean, if you're trying to get bank loans, obviously it's not that frequent. It's recording the data and then looking at the data. And then maybe on a monthly basis, you're looking back and saying, okay, I'm doing those lead indicators. Is that moving me on the scoreboard? Is that moving the results indicator? I thought there was a correlation. I thought this was one of those 20% of the things that were driving most of the results, but wow, that's not moving. Am I missing something? And so you can do a little bit more of analysis because you're pursuing those hunches to say, gee, I think more activity on the web would end up in this result. Or more likes on my Facebook page would get this result. So I've got a campaign to do that. You can do that, at the end of the month you go, gosh, it hasn't moved. And then you can assess, you say, well, I really believe that it's going to work. So therefore, I'm going to stick with it for another 30 days. But again, when you're self-employed or you're the boss and you're just doing this in your head, you can get cold feet on a strategy and go, well, gosh, I thought that was working. And you say, not going to bother. But you quit measuring it, you quit implementing it, and you're not doing it in a methodical fashion to say, does it just need more time to bake? And then it will build up steam or not. But it forces you to really try to get to those 20% of the activities that give you the best results, the highest return. And we all have our biases, what we like to do, and that we think is what really makes a difference. And sometimes it really doesn't. It may be quite inefficient. Thoughts on that, Mary Jo?
So you set up this wildly important goal, and isn't it, there's sometimes like a danger to becoming myopic. You're so focused on this goal, and you need like 5 wildly important goals to really make everything happen. So, giving this pattern, this cadence to every wildly important goal is what really can derail me.
And that's why, you can't really have 8 or 9 wildly important goals. So, where you were talking about, survive, be profitable. Be profitable is sort of a higher goal. If you're profitable, that metric will also drive those other goals. So that comes back to the design of the wildly important goals. So that one, it's simple. You can write it on the mirror. You can keep that, heads up. Is that this is what I want to achieve? I want to have 100 new people. 100 new relationships by the end of the year. If I do that, then I just know my averages, so on and so forth. That's going to make me excited, make me feel good, and I know the revenue will fall from it. I don't know exactly what the revenue is, but I know that will hit my minimum goals, and that will be pretty exciting to me. And then you come up with lead indicators. So there may be 3 or 4 different lead indicators, or 4 or 5. So it may be calls, it may be touches, it may be all the different things that go to that. So that's where you start to spread out more touches as opposed to more wildly important goals. Does that make sense? So more, and then you track that on the scoreboard. You don't want to have too many things to track, but I think as a sole entrepreneur, yeah, we probably have 5 or 6, 7 things that we need to track and measure that we think is really important, or the most important things in our day. And then start to see is keeping track of that, changing the needle on the results. And we've got to be smart enough to let go of some things. I'm saying, gosh, I'm going to more networking meetings, but it's not resulting in that. So I either have to do something different at those meetings, or with what I'm doing at those meetings, because that is not correlating. I'm not seeing any, but it gives you some focus as a business owner to make changes, other than just what, I mean, you know, confessing here is that we sort of go on our gut instincts and what feels right, and based on our experience and our likes and dislikes. And that's why, you know, so many small businesses fail, is because people may be passionate about one thing, but it's not the only thing that's necessary for it to survive and thrive as a business. And so having a process that you can follow is a big part of that process. Because you can go out here all excited, great, I got a wildly important goal, I've got a process, I got a couple of ideas for a scoreboard, then I can put it on a whiteboard here, and I count down for the end of the month, or a thermometer, you know, a couple of different graphs. If you do it on a spreadsheet, you need to print that darn thing and stick it up where you can see it and keep track of that. But don't hide it in a notebook. Don't hide it. It needs to be up front and visible. But the whirlwind gets in the way. The day-to-day activities. You go back and you got 20 messages, and then you're off, and all of a sudden it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You go, oh man, what did we talk about this morning? The Scotty was good. I remember that. But what was that? Jabber?
I'm sorry? What was the flavor?
What was the flavor? Yeah.
No, it was, it's what will be lemon pesto. It's
Lemon pesto.
lemon, basil, and pine nut, toasted pine nuts. Yeah.
So a comment on that. Some of our most highly paid consultants are the ones who give us that correlation through their experience.
Right.
So, and then you also have mastermind groups.
Right, exactly.
You know, groups that can help you with accountability.
Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
There's a real critical point is that, you know, you have highly paid consultants that can come in there and help you see the forest for the trees, okay? And be able to say, based on their experience and looking at other situations. That's why the seminar is good, because it takes sort of the consolidated wisdom of a lot of people looking at a lot of different companies and what works and what doesn't work. So again, we've got the wildly important goals, measuring achievement. Each step of it is a little bit deeper than you might think. The scoreboard, you know, have fun with that. And again, it might be as easy as just having a whiteboard in your office and tick marks on the board, you know, and what your goal is for that. But keep it visible, keep it up front, and then have the accountability sessions. And accountability sort of has a negative term, but make it a positive. Celebrate the wins, okay? And as you look back, and if you're a one-person band, what did I do well last week? What made me feel great? Are there any wins? Is there anything I can take from that? Can I turn that into a process? How can I do more of that? Or if it was, you know, or if you had a failure or a setback, was that something that I did? Can I do that, or just need to let that go and just say that's the way things happen? But I gather what I did, I examine that, and then I look forward to plan for the coming week. And again, I know things are going to hit the fan when I walk through the door of my office, and things will change. But I have that process that I'm going to keep score, and by keeping score, it keeps bringing me back to that compass point of what's important. And you have a process to do that. So, I have one other handout, which is a semi-shameless plug. But on the back of this is sort of the 4 disciplines of financial implementation, sort of in that same vein. And on the front side of it is just what I share with clients typically at a first meeting, just talking about the challenges of financial planning. And I'll just explain one thing on that sheet. The very first number at the top there where it talks about the percentages is that every year the industry, so all the financial people in here know this, but the qualitative analysis survey points out that if, for that very first number, if you had invested 20 years ago, 10,000 in the stock market, you would have made 9.2%. However, the average individual investor made 5% over the same 20-year period. And then you say, well, stock people are a little bit more aggressive. Let's look at the bond people. In the bond market, if you just put money in, you would have made 5.74% over the last 20 years. The average bond investor made less than 1%. And why is that? And it's for all of these different reasons below. And that's the challenge, is that, you know, the financial media has its agenda. Everybody has a different agenda. So